Filip Forsberg and David Poile talk about Forsberg's new 8-year deal. We'll have the highlights from their press conference yesterday and some of the more interesting tidbits. Plus, Predators development camp gets underway. Our own co-host, Ann Kimmel, was there yesterday, provides a breakdown of day one, some of the players to watch, and an interesting trend among the restricted free agent offers this season. We'll discuss that today on the Locked On Predators podcast.
You're Locked On Predators, your daily podcast on the Nashville Predators. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Thank you for making Locked On Predators your first listen of the day every single day. I'm Nick Morgan. I'm a writer and editor on theforecheck.com, and I have a partner in crime.
You do. I am Ann Kimmel. I'm a writer at ontheforecheck.com.
So big news yesterday, big news all over the weekend. That's, of course, Filip Forsberg coming back to Nashville. We'll skip the unrestricted free agency market. 8-year, $8.5 million deal, first reported over the weekend. The team made it official yesterday, had a press conference with Poile and Forsberg. Kind of an interesting press conference, kind of an interesting vibe between the two, because it's weird, Ann. We heard that there was chatter that kind of there was tension between both sides. I think it was The Athletic that put out something. It's like, hey, they may get the deal done, but are there, is their relationship going to be like kind of frayed from here on out? Didn't really come across yesterday if there was tension between the two.
No, I thought it was pretty typical. And I've kind of felt the same way, thinking this has really dragged on a long time. People are going to have some feelings about this one way or the other. But again, in the press conference, I feel like that wasn't it. I feel like what they highlighted was just this was a complicated package, and David Poile had some things that he wanted in there, looking forward, wanted some flexibility in, and they were very amiable. I mean, they laughed, they cried. It was better than Cats. They would do it all over again. It was great.
Are we talking about the movie or the play? Well, I mean, either way. They both suck. So,
word, yes, fact. But yeah, I thought it was a very amiable press conference. They both seemed on the same page that just it was a complicated deal to get done, but that they both were pulling in the same direction. So it was interesting.
Yeah. So let's hit some of the notes, and then we'll kind of go through, give our reactions on them. There's a couple other clips that we don't have that we want to kind of highlight because I thought they brought up some interesting points. First off, let's hear from Filip Forsberg, because as we know, he probably had his fair share of options had he hit the open market. Probably could have gone to a team maybe a little bit closer to competing for the Cup than Nashville. So why did Filip Forsberg come back? Let's hear about it.
It's up there. Probably, honestly, the most important thing, because at the end of the day, you turn 28 this summer. You want to achieve things. We've been close. We've had a really good team over. I've been lucky enough, obviously, played in a lot of really good teams here, but we still haven't taken that final step. And for me, I mean, you look at the team and the moves that was been made in over the last few years, and obviously the season we had last year. I think this team is trending definitely in the right direction, and that was a huge part for me. Like I said, in my age, you obviously can't take anything for granted. I'm not old, but I'm also not a rookie anymore. So you need to do everything you can and surround yourself with the best possibilities to win, which goes on the ice and off the ice. And with this decision, I feel like we've done that. I mean, this team is trending in the right direction. And like David mentioned, bringing Ryan McDonough on board, who's a player that clearly has done exactly what we're trying to do in this team, and been a key part of it too. I think that's something that we definitely can build on. And it'll be very, very exciting to have him alongside us this year.
First off, the mustache. Mustache is on point. And the fact that, there's the 5 o'clock shadow stubble everywhere else on the beard, that tells you that somewhere in the past week, maybe for the bachelor party, he was rocking nothing but the mustache.
Yes. Now, and look, I'm not a fan of the mustache in general. Like, God bless UC Saros and Ellie Tolvanen. But Filip Forsberg, I mean, it's magic. It's just magic. And with the little like off-season scruff going on, like pre-wedding, like letting it go a little bit. Very nice, Filip Forsberg. Looking good.
It's
Looking
got,
good.
it's got to stay for the wedding, right? Because
Oh,
I know a lot of like brides, in the pictures, they want the guys clean shaven. The mustache has gotta stay,
oh,
right?
it's got to stay. He has said before that Aaron really likes the mustache. So I feel very confident that it will stay. I mean, it's a part of the legend at this point.
It is part of the legend at this point. Yeah, let's talk about what Forsberg said about coming back. He mentioned that he kind of felt that the Preds, the stuff over the past couple of years, there's been indications that they're trending in the right direction, which is a bold soundbite because if you ask a lot of the fans, they'll say it's the other way, that they're kind of going the wrong way, or at least spinning in circles. So it's kind of interesting to know what Forsberg saw. A big part of it, I think, could be the seasons that he and Duchesne and Yossi had. And even with, guys like UC Saros stepping up, where, yeah, even though the Preds got creamed in the first round, we've talked about this before, there's at least indication that the core is on fire right now. Sometimes that's what puts you above and beyond, a team in need of a rebuild, like Chicago was the past couple of years, the San Jose Sharks. Like, you could be, you have all these big contracts, but if the big contracts are playing the best hockey of their life, then at least you can go, okay, there's a core there, there's a foundation to build around. And I think maybe that's what Forsberg saw.
It also helps that the youth are looking pretty promising, and Forsberg mentioned that when you have players like Tanner Jeannot, you have Phil Tomasino, who just, finished his first season, but there's a tremendous amount of promise when you look at some of these younger players that have had some NHL ice time last season, and I think that is also a component for Filip Forsberg looking forward. It's not just what do we have now, but also what is coming down the pipeline? Where are we going to be in 2 years? What's the talent level going to be? And there is some promise with that with the Predators, and I think that also has to be a factor for him.
Yeah, for sure. And I think there's signs there the Preds have at least something going around. Ryan McDonough's
huge
indication. I know a lot of people are kind of 50-50 on that deal, but it's an indication that, hey, the Preds aren't going to be like the sell off everybody and try to get future assets over the next couple of years. They're going to be the team that actually, tries to bring in people. Say what you will about Ryan McDonough and that contract situation, but at least bringing him in to help the defense shows you're at least trying to be competitive.
Yes.
Yeah, apparently that was enough for Forsberg. It's interesting with the flat cap and what kind of deals he would have gotten on the open market, because we've seen a lot of teams, kind of in a weird place. There's situations with restricted free agents we're going to talk about here in a little bit. Forsberg winds up getting 8.5 from Nashville. At least money-wise, total money-wise, I wonder if there's an indication that maybe they weren't going to get what they would have, let's say if this season happened 2 years ago or something like that, because there's a lot of teams struggling with the cap right now. And maybe there's indication that, the agent reached out and wasn't like what we're hearing. And maybe that was also kind of what steered Forsberg back to Nashville. It's like, okay, if I can't go to Toronto or, any of these teams, then at least, I'll just go back to where I'm happy. There's not really an upgrade here for the money I'm going to want.
Right. It was interesting in the press conference. So much of what he talked about really centered on, and the same thing with David Poile, was Forsberg being here, Forsberg being here, Forsberg being here. But you do have to, believe that his agents did their due diligence looking around. I was kind of, I'm kind of surprised by that, in the sense that I really feel like Forsberg probably could have done a little bit better somewhere else, possibly. But, you look at all the different things. I think, you look at where are we trending? That's a factor. Ryan McDonough was a huge factor, something that was brought up a number of times in this press conference as a signal that the Predators are actively pursuing a cup and improving the team. But, and Filip Forsberg and his fiance are very happy in Nashville. So you kind of got to wonder. I would be surprised, though, if there wasn't maybe just a little bit more money out there for Forsberg and he just decided that he would rather stay here. I don't know. I would love to know that. I would love to know that.
Well, I'm sure there's some things that we're never going to hear.
Yes.
Of these negotiations as well. But,
yes.
We'll have to see. What we did here in the press conference was the mighty P word, which was posturing. We'll see how that played into negotiations, plus the soundbite of the day when it came to press conference. We'll also talk about development camp. But first, though, wanted to mention today's show brought to you by our friends at Built Bar and their new flavor, Coconut Brownie Chunk Puff. For the people who invented healthy and tasty, comes the latest gift to your taste buds. You've probably tried the amazing Coconut Brownie Chunk Built Bar, but guess what? Your friends at Built Bar have given Coconut Brownie Chunk the Puffs treatment. That's right, Coconut Brownie's Chunk Built Bar, flavor you love, in a deliciously chewy marshmallow covered in 100% real chocolate. It is a fluffy cloud of coconut brownie goodness. That doesn't mean it is a straight up sugary treat, though. Built bars are good for you. They're low calorie, low sugar, but high in protein. They're all made with collagen protein as well, so it absorbs into your body faster, keeps you full longer, and helps give you many nutrients and benefits you need to keep yourself at 100% all day. And of course, as we mentioned, they taste amazing, but you can enjoy them guilt-free. They're good for you. They're the perfect treat, perfect when you got a craving, if you need to satisfy your sweet tooth, or if you need a quick, healthy snack. They are all an excellent source of protein. If coconut's not your thing, that's fine. There's many other flavors like the churro, chunk puff, mud pie, classic flavors like cherry, barcia, mint brownie, coconut almond, salted caramel. Pretty much if there's a flavor you can think of, Built Bar has it. So go to built.com right now and use the promo code LOCKED15 to get 15% off your order. Again, that is promo code LOCKED15 for 15% off at built.com. Yeah, we're talking about the Filip Forsberg press conference with David Poile yesterday. And one of the things that at least has longevity on Twitter because of a couple of different people is the word posturing. David Poile was asked by somebody, can't remember who, not important, who cares?
Not important.
What basically was the talk about David Poile having a plan A, B, C, D, all that good stuff. Posturing in David Poile in a not so subtly cheeky way, just basically said, yeah, that was posturing.
So many things to say, and yet just don't want to talk about certain people. Here's my thing. I think when you go to a press conference, ask your questions. And it's not that the concept behind that question isn't an interesting question to ask. It is so much how you do what you do that makes the difference. And I think that is the crux of it. It is not the content of the question, it is the character of the asker in this situation that was very interesting. And I thought David Poile handled it very well. He was like, oh yeah, totally posturing.
Yeah.
This was the plan all along, of course, but do we always we can just sometimes have big Predators press conferences without those moments, don't you think?
It's interesting because now I go back and I think how much of anything Poile does is posturing. Can you take it at face value for anything he says? Because if everything he makes, I get it, it's his job as GM. He's not
right
very forthcoming or transparent on a lot of things, but hey, we thought we were being transparent on Forsberg when we were like, yeah, we think we can get a deal done, but we have a lot of backup plans. And then find out it's like, no, we didn't really have a backup plan. So which part of that was posturing? Did you really not have a backup plan, and you're saying that to get like forced
Right.
agent, kind of sign on the bottom line? Or is what you just said posturing, where you're like, oh no, we didn't really have a backup plan, and this is your way of trying to like mend fences with Forsberg?
Right.
Yeah, and how much of like the stuff that came out, where there's chatter, we talked about it at the top of the show, hey, chatter that even if they got the deal done, there's kind of going to be a strained relationship between the two, and they came out all hunky-dory and cheery. Was that posturing from Forsberg's camp to try to get Preds fans to put pressure? Yeah, it's kind of like an existential like little like blip of a soundbite that makes you go like, do my hockey players like actually tell us anything?
Yes. Well, and we've talked about it on this show as we've kind of sat through the saga of the Filip Forsberg contract, that David Poile really was putting forth a very specific narrative. And you know what? The theater major in me is like, do it. That's your job. But I am with you. I'm like, can you all, now that we're all done, all right, let's sift through this and tell me what was real and what wasn't. But you know what? That is a part of their job. The art of negotiation, it's an entire skill set. And, they played their parts.
Yeah. It's like the classic soundbite from a GM when somebody asks him about like the coach being on the hot seat, and he's like, no, this is our guy. We are committed to him. We think he's going to be the best option moving forward. And then like a week later, that coach is fired. And the GM, yes. And then you hear it's like, oh yeah, he sucked. We never got along the entire time.
Yeah, we had a lot of internal problems.
It kind of goes to show you just don't trust anything any sports person says in an interview ever.
And I feel like hockey is maybe a little bit the worst about that. Like, I don't know. There's the hockey players. They're a pretty reserved bunch. We need a little bit more like PK Subban, Igor Afanasyev in the world.
Yeah, I would have loved like if just one time. Like I want like one of these press conferences to go like like Forsberg sitting there and being like, yeah, absolutely, I'm pissed at how this went. I don't want to be sitting here next to this guy.
Yes.
Like, what's the deal? Like, I just want to see like somebody on loan, or like there's announced like a big signing in the GM. Just be like, yeah, this is an overpay. We didn't want as much, but we needed him more than than he needed us. So we had no choice but to overpay. And if it doesn't work out, it's the next GM's fault.
Right. No, I would love to hear that. Like we just signed somebody and it's the best we could do. Like kind of bottom of the barrel, but the best we could do. Yeah.
We panicked.
Sure.
We swung and missed Johnny Gaudreau. So here we gave Claude Giroux an 8-year deal.
There you go. Come on.
One more soundbite that played out yesterday, and my favorite one. So we all know the story by now is that Filip Forsberg was on his bachelor party when this deal came through. It's lore at this point. What's interesting is how it was brought up in the press conference. Let's take a listen to David Poile and Filip Forsberg.
So the true story is Phil gave me a call, and the bachelor party said he needed a little bit more money, and I understood what he was going through, and that's how we got the deal done. Now, just kidding. Don't write that to everybody, but
no, it's too late. Wait, David, we're writing that.
Oh, 100%. This is the story.
Yeah. 100%. I think it confirms our theory, Anne, that Filip Forsberg asked for help for his bachelor party. David Poile knew, and so all of a sudden, a giant cake rolls in. The boys are getting hyped, and out jumps David Poile holding the no movement clause Filip Forsberg asked for. I think this confirms it, if anything.
I really feel like that is one of the most disturbing visuals that we've ever discussed on this podcast.
Be wearing a stripper outfit.
Okay, but you know what? You put it out there a couple episodes ago, and you can't take that back now.
You're the one.
Now it's tainted. Now the
whole
thing is
You're
tainted.
the one that said the French maid outfit. I just said David Poile was going to dump out of a stripper cake.
No, you said in a sexy policeman costume and play some sort of song that's way too cool for me to remember.
I mean, he could have like a long sleeve. Yeah.
It's not okay.
I don't know. Yeah.
I think we should definitely give this some traction. Like, let's give this story traction so that 20 years from now, Predators fans are like, and did you know that Filip Forsberg, like, let's give it some traction. But I'm going to need a couple days to.
Somehow this is going to result in a libel lawsuit.
Gosh.
Like years from now, somebody is going to be like super like just put off by that. They're like, no, we got to sue these two.
Yeah, it's gonna be like Forsberg is gonna write his autobiography. He's gonna hear this and he's gonna be like, we gotta fix this.
Yeah. David Poile did not jump out of a stripper cake. It was actually Brian Poile wearing a firefighter's outfit.
Would you please stop?
Yeah.
I'm not okay. Not okay. Okay, but there's plenty more that we could talk about that doesn't have a thing to do with David or Brian Poile in any sort of costume whatsoever. So we're going to take a look at development camp, one of my favorite weeks of the year.
Yeah, development camp, and the prospects come to town. Kind of overshadowed by the Forsberg stuff, but there's a lot to like. You were actually at Centennial yesterday for the first practice. What stood out to you?
You know what's funny? The very first thing that stood out to me was how many people were there. Last year at development camp, now granted, this was back when people were still, I think we still had to mask and stuff, but when the first day of development camp last year, there were like 2 of us there. Walked into Centennial, and I'm telling you, the place was full of people excited to see this first day of practice. And we got to kind of talking about it. I was there with some of our On the Forecheck friends. Sean Smith was there and Jeffrey Middleton was there. And we got to talking about like, okay, looking around, this place is really full. What is it? I think part of it is excitement. The draft just happened and all of that. But I really wonder how much is the Yaroslav Askarov factor, because the Eagle has landed, my friends. Askarov was there. So we were kind of looking around like, okay, how much of this is people have been so hungry to see Askarov, the man, the myth, the legend, who's like just a little sprout. Everybody give him some space. But yeah, it was packed. It was packed and it was great. Like the energy was really great. So that was like my very first observation. Second observation, there are a couple players that are definitely going to have the eye of the organization and the fans who go while they're there this week. Obviously, again, Askarov is a big one. People were excited to see him, but Luke Evangelista, who had a phenomenal season with the London Knights, is playing, he just looks fantastic. Zachary Leroux is another one that, I think we need to try to get him on here, because I can only imagine, based on just watching him on the ice, what that experience would be.
Yeah, Zachary the hero is like a player. Like when you talk, Ann, about players fitting the Preds identity, that's Zachary the hero. He is like if Mountain Dew was a person. Like you don't know, you have no idea what kind of crazy chaos is going to happen when it comes out, but it's going to end with a dude in a mullet just causing some kind of commotion.
He just is all out all the time. And it's development camp, you're running drills. And of course, these players want to do well and perform well. He just operates at a whole different level. Like he's really something. But we also got to see Joachim Kimmel, who was there. That was really fun. So I think there's a couple players that are really going to stand out but it just to hear hockey again, there's something about the sound of hockey that is music to my ears. So it was just a really, it was a great first day of development camp. It was a great opportunity to see some of these younger players again, and to be able to see just the difference in their game. You could see a difference in last year's development camp performance by somebody like Luke Evangelista to this year's. So I love development camp. If you have an opportunity to go to an open practice, anyone, it's just definitely worth the drive to Centennial.
Yeah, we're going to have more on development camp throughout the week. We know tomorrow's the start of free agency, so we're going to talk about that, but also talk about development camp. We've heard from some of the players, so we'll play those bites for you. So plenty coming up on development camp shortly, including some more players to watch, players that stand out. So be sure you're tuning into Locked On Predators podcast. Last bit of Preds news, Ann, is restricted free agency. Yesterday was the deadline for qualifying people. The Preds qualify 6 of their 8 restricted free agents, including Yakov Trenin. The 2 that weren't were Matt Luff and David Ferentz. Ferentz, to me, a bit of a surprise, and
yes.
a lot of people are kind of echoing that sentiment. Realize that he had a pretty dismal first pro season in Milwaukee last year, but considering this guy was considered by a lot of people to be a top 3 Preds prospect just like last year.
Yes.
A little surprising that the Preds would seemingly move on from him that fast.
That was a name on the list that I really didn't even spend much time contemplating whether they would do a qualifying offer with, because I just assumed that it would happen. So it was very surprising to me that he did not receive a qualifying offer. And I'm with you. He really was a name that I think that we've heard for several seasons, as this is a player in the pipeline for defensemen that is going to eventually make a splash. And I'm really surprised by this. The other one was Matt Luff, which I will say also, I was a little bit surprised, not Farron's surprised, but Matt Luff also did not receive a qualifying offer. And he was somebody that I felt like had done just enough to kind of keep him in Milwaukee, to keep him on the back burner, to keep him as somebody who would get called up. So interesting. But let's all breathe a sigh of relief for Yakov Trenin, because I kept watching the clock thinking, TikTok folks, like, put out the announcement.
Yeah, I mean, that was never going to be, I think, an issue. I think there's
No.
the fact that they qualified Cole Smith and Devin Cooley. I think that's a little bit more of a surprise, because we really don't see a spot for either of those two in the organization long term. But the Trenin thing, obviously, I think it would have been a surprise had they not qualified Yakov Trenin. But you look at the trend yesterday, Ann, and it's something that I kind of wanted to talk about. There's a lot of good players that weren't getting qualifying offers around the NHL. The Blackhawks, Dylan Strome, who had 50 points last year, Dominic Kubalik, who's like a former 20, 30 goal scorer. They don't get qualified, and you think, okay, well, maybe that's just Chicago doing their tanking thing that they're doing right now. But you go around the league, like Brendan Lemieux didn't get one from LA.
Yes.
Tim Sonoff, who was a starter in the playoffs for Washington, doesn't get a qualifying offer there. And the theme is that the teams just don't want to pay them their qualifying offers. And you kind of saw that with the Preds and Luke Cunnin. And it kind of gives you a thing, or at least raises a question where, is this going to kind of be, because of the flat cap, are teams just being more cautious about cap space? Or is this a trend that's starting to imagine where maybe they're a little bit less attached to their restricted free agents? And, if they're not what they want to be in their first, 2-3 years with the team, are they willing to jettison them and use that cap space for something else? Are they going to be a little bit more cold, a little bit more calculating moving forward?
Yeah, I was really surprised at the number of players just across the league that did not receive qualifying offers. Players like, for instance, Rem Pitlick. I needed a moment on that one. I'm not going to lie to you. But yeah, it does make you wonder it felt a little bit different this season because of that. And you do sort of have to wonder, okay, is there just not going to be that kind of almost automatic extra security for restricted free agents? Because it really was, just sort of no, not so much. Not so much this season. Now, it makes it interesting as you're looking, going ahead in the next couple of days. It keeps it a little bit interesting because, the pool of who's out there maybe grows a bit. But yeah, it was very surprising. And you do have to wonder what is behind that. And is this just sort of going to become the way that teams deal with some restricted free agents, that they're maybe like, yeah, I don't want to give it another year?
Yeah. And it used to be like, if you had a restricted free agent that was like anything close to decent,
right,
you would absolutely lock him up because, okay,
yes.
well, we'll he's under our control. We'll see what happens. Now it's like, hey, he had a good season, but the contract not really there. We don't really like where negotiations are going. It's you're willing to jettison pretty good players. And for the Predators, there are going to be some players that absolutely fit their needs moving forward. Like Dominic Kubalik is somebody the Preds could absolutely use in their middle six. Same with Sonny Milano, who had a breakout season, would be a very good third line candidate for Anaheim. So it adds a little bit of a wrinkle to unrestricted free agency.
It does.
There's now suddenly a lot more, you would never call them top tier players. You may not even call them the next tier players, but they're very solid players out there that could maybe be good depth additions for some really good teams.
Yeah, and I think that for the GMs, it sort of opens up a different avenue for how you're going to put some pieces together for your team, because like you said, you're not necessarily looking at the top tier, biggest UFAs that are out there that everybody's kind of going to fight over, but it opens up an ability to sort of slot some guys in that maybe weren't available before. So I think it's going to be really interesting to watch how this goes this season, because like you said, this was kind of a sort of a head scratcher when you watched it happen across the league yesterday. It'll be interesting to see if the GMs kind of have a different approach, if they spend a little bit more time and not necessarily money, but collectively money on some of those type of players instead of chasing after, some of the higher tier guys. So it's going to be really interesting to see how it plays out this season. And if it's going to be something that down the road, a year from now, teams are going to say, yeah, well, we picked up this guy that didn't get a qualifying offer and it worked out really well. It's going to be something to keep an eye on.
Well, speaking of unrestricted free agency, that whole thing starts tomorrow. And tomorrow morning's show, we will get you primed, get you pumped with a full UFA preview. Who might the Preds go after? Maybe some predictions for other players around the league. So be sure you stay with us. We'll also have more from development camp, as we mentioned, including sound bites from some of the players and their first experiences in Nashville. Until then, Ann, where can the people find you online?
You can find my work at ontheforecheck.com, and you can find me on Twitter at @AnnK_Mama on Ice.
I'm Nick Morgan. You can find me at ontheforecheck.com. Follow me on Twitter at _NSMorgan. And while you're there, follow the podcast at LO_Predators. If you're watching this on YouTube, be sure to like the video, subscribe, and leave a comment. Let us know what costume you think David and Brian Poile used when they jumped out of the cake to bring Filip Forsberg his contract. That's going to do it for us today on the Locked On Predators podcast. Thank you for making us your first listen of the day. We will be back tomorrow with our unrestricted free agent preview.